Hey, what's up, everybody? This is Marcus from the Weekly Spot, and today I'll be doing a spoiler review of The Killing Floor, the first book of the Jack Reacher series written by Lee Child. When Jack Reacher, an ex-military policeman and now a drifter, goes to a town in Georgia called Margrave to investigate a mysterious death of a musician, Blind Blake, he was arrested for a murder that he didn't commit. But after his name was cleared, he discovered that the victim of the murder was someone that he knew who was investigating a huge conspiracy. So now, wanting to find the people responsible and to finish what the victim has started, Jack Reacher, with the help of the captain and chief of detectives Finley and Officer Roscoe, form an investigation to put a stop to the conspiracy going on in the town of Margrave. Now, in case you haven't seen my non-spoiler review and you're just watching this, I gave this book a 5 out of 5. I thought this was a great thriller. I like the characters, I like the story, the mystery, the suspense, the action, and overall, I just thought it was a great book. As I mentioned before in my non-spoiler review, my first introduction to Jack Reacher was the movie Jack Reacher that came out in 2012. And for the longest time, I didn't know that there was a book series until I saw the Reacher series that came out 2022 this year. And after I watched the show, that's when I started reading the books. At this point, I'm not caught up, but so far from what I've read, I'm enjoying the series, and I recommend checking it out. Jack Reacher is such an awesome character. With this being a spoiler review, I can go into a little more detail about his character. Jack Reacher is like a happy-go-lucky guy, a mysterious stranger, a loner, smart, tough. Reacher is kind of like a complicated, a complex character. From what it seems, has quite a few characteristics. He comes off as stoic, arrogant, ruthless, self-confident, and someone that has some introverted tendencies. He's like the silent type. He's not much of a talker. He mostly talks to himself inside his head, so there's a lot of inner monologue going on with him. But despite his quiet and aggressive personality, you do see a softer and more compassionate side to him. You see that he is friendly, caring, and honorable. From this book, and in books that I read so far, Jack Reacher definitely gives me like Rambo and Sherlock Holmes vibes. Like he's like the combination of brains and brawn. This book in particular kind of reminds me of the first Rambo movie, First Blood, where in that movie Rambo, just like Reacher, who was a soldier and a drifter, walks into the town, and right when he gets there, he didn't get the warmest welcome. Yeah, it's kind of like First Blood, just minus being on the run from the cops. And Sherlock Holmes, well, Reacher has some really good deduction skills. You see that pretty early on in the story when Finley was interrogating him about the murder, and that part of the book, just going by just the description of the crime scene and how the victim died. He explained to Finley that there's not one but three people that were involved in the murder, and he turned out to be right in the end. He even deducted Finley and his background. And it's crazy how he can figure things out like that, like it was just too easy, you know. I don't think he's on the same level as Sherlock, but whenever Reacher, uses those skills, Sherlock Holmes is the one character that comes to mind. He may not be an angel, but he's not a bad guy either. Reacher just likes to keep things to himself. He minds his own business. Though trouble seems to find him, he's not going out his way looking for trouble or trying to bother anybody. But he is somebody that will help you out if he can, because he does care about doing what's right in the end. There's not a lot of action in this, but the action is pretty brutal. Rachel is not just brutal with his personality, it's also with his fighting. I'm talking about headbutting. He does that quite a lot. Like that's like his thing. He goes for the low blows, the eye gouging, neck breaking, bone breaking, etc. Like this guy shows no mercy. And I may be exaggerating here when I say this, but Jack Reacher is like a force of nature. He's someone that you do not want to mess with. And what's interesting about Jack Reacher is that he's a wanderer with very little baggage. He travels with some cash, a folding toothbrush, no ID, no credit cards, and when it comes to his clothes, like the only clothes that he has with him are the ones that he has on, and if they get dirty or anything like that, he just throws them away and gets new ones. Now that part I don't get, but I guess when he says he likes to travel light, he really likes to travel light. So I guess I just answered my own question just now. But besides that though, some people may find it crazy the way he moves. I would have carried at least a few things personally, but I think it's pretty cool because it's like he's free. He's free in the sense of no commitment, responsibilities, obligations. He just goes to one place, stays there for a bit, and then moves on to the next place. There is also a moment in this book where we learn that Reacher likes to do things like going to hotels and using fake names, not because he's hiding or anything like that. He just does it for the fun of it. He says it feels like he's beating the system, and as silly as that sounds, I like that because it shows that Reacher does have a fun side to him, like he does have a sense of humor. There are some pretty good characters that I like, mainly Captain and Chief of Detectives Finley and Officer Roscoe, who also becomes Reacher's love interest. I like the chemistry and the teamwork between the three characters. I thought they made a pretty cool trio. Finley's introduction tells you that he's a cautious man. At first, even though he was just doing his job, I couldn't help but be just a little annoyed at his character. Just thinking that Reacher was a suspect because as the reader, he's clearly innocent. And maybe that's the point. And again, it's understandable in his point of view. Especially when you learn more details about the murder and other things adding to the situation, like corrupt cops, business people, and politicians. So it's pretty much like a bad case of bad luck, coincidence, and just being at the wrong place at the wrong time. Like this was not a good day for him at all. But the more you learn about Finley and his character, the more I do like him in the end. And also feeling bad for the guy when you hear his backstory. Like you learn that back in Boston, where he was from, he was a cop for 20 years. He planned to retire, spend more time with his wife, but suddenly his wife fell out of love with him, and they ended up getting a divorce. So feeling like a wreck and needed money, he found out about the chief of detectives position in Margrave and took the job, as he felt it was like a self punishment or penance that he deserved or something like that. And when he got to Margrave, he got the job, which would make Finley like the first black cop in Margrave. But he felt the only reason why he got that job was because that he's black, and that would give the department a better image. And the reason why Finley was never promoted was there was some racism involved. Plus, he's not corrupt. So yeah, it's a pretty sad story. And again, it's not like that didn't like him. It was just I was annoyed at him at first. But I grew to like him though. Finley is a pretty cool character. I like the relationship and the banter between Reacher and Finley. While Finley is the good, honest cop that wants to do the right thing and goes by the law, Reacher is somebody that also wants to do the right thing. Reacher can be noble, but he doesn't really care about the law that much. He's more like a vigilante that likes to give his own brand of justice. While Finley is the one that was suspicious of Reacher at first, Roscoe was the one that was showing. She was showing him more sympathy towards him, as she believes that he's innocent. Like I said before, with Reacher, there are moments where you see a softer, more compassionate side to him, but you really see that side of him when it comes to Roscoe. Roscoe, I thought, was a cool character. She's kind of She's kind, sympathetic, a sympathetic person, and a good and honest cop who has a history of Margrave, as she and her family grew up in the town, even butting heads with Mayor Teal's family, which became kind of like a long time grudge between the two families, as you find out in the book. I like the relationship between her and Reacher. When they first met, it looked like they hit it off pretty quick, but as the story progresses and you see them spending more time together and getting to know each other, these two do start to care for each other and have what I thought was a genuine connection. I thought they had some nice chemistry, which kind of sucks that that things didn't work out between the two because of the different things that they want in their life. Roscoe actually thought about leaving with Reacher, but she didn't. She didn't want to leave her home, and Reacher thought about staying, but sticking around is just not his thing. Now looking up Jack Reacher after watching the Reacher show, I knew that there were other books, and I understand that he's a wanderer, but I still think it's unfortunate. Like, however, there was a moment in the book where Reacher thought about staying in Margrave and building a future with Roscoe. Now, who knows what would have happened if he stayed? But for him to even think about something like that and getting all teary-eyed when he left, that has to be a big deal for the character. And I think that's interesting because it makes me wonder if is Reacher just going to wander for the rest of his life, or is he just, or is there a possibility that one day he will settle down? Lee Child I think he does a great job of keeping the reader on edge, and the story has some twists and turns, but the biggest one is that the victim of the murder turned out to be Reacher's older brother, Joe Reacher, who turns out to be working for the Treasury Department as the head of the counterfeiting division, investigating a counterfeiting operation going on in Margrave. Up to this point, this is when the story starts to get personal. Now maybe that's too much of a coincidence for some people. However, to me though, even though I knew it was coming because I saw the Reacher show first, I still thought it was a crazy reveal though. And it's not that I wasn't already into the story before that, but that reveal with the show is what got me more invested into the story, just like with the book. Joe is described as someone who is very precise and intelligent, and though Reacher is smart, Joe is more so the smart brother. He's a big part of this story. He doesn't make an appearance, but he is mentioned a lot, and you learn about his character and his relationship with Reacher as the story goes on. He may not be like Jack, but the more you learn about him, he sounds like a pretty cool character in his own way. And although Joe, who I know has made other appearances in the books, if there ever was a book about Joe, not necessarily a series, but just a one full-on novel about Joe Reacher, I think that would be pretty awesome. At least to me, I would definitely get that book. When it comes to the villain, I thought Mr. Clanner was a pretty good villain. He's the benefactor of the Clanner Foundation and the head of the Clanner family. And in this book, I thought it did a good job of showing how powerful, crazy, smart, and just how dangerous he is. What's crazy is that the guy has pretty much turned the whole town of Margrave around with his money and his foundation, which is why some of the townspeople's reaction was negative when it was taken down at the end, which I guess it makes sense in a messed up way. I mean, even though the guy was bad, a lot of places and businesses were still running because of him. So it's like, how will this town survive without him, The story gets kind of crazy as it progresses when the Reacher, Roscoe, and Finley learn all about the people Clanner had bought out and the connections that he has with his money and his foundation. As I mentioned before, corrupt cops, politicians, business people, even people that you thought were allies, were all with Clanner. Like, there's a character named Picard, who's a friend of Finley from the FBI, who you thought came to help out, right, but ended up betraying them in the end, as you find out that he was working with Clanner the whole time. Like, it gets to the point where it's like, okay, who and where can they go to, and who can they trust? Now, there are some characters I feel like I should mention that I didn't bring up in my non-spoiler review, but Paul Hubble, he's a retired banker who was tricked into getting involved with Kleiner's counterfeiting operation. So he called Joe Reacher for help, which is why Joe was there in Margrave. And it's crazy to think that the reason why Jack Reacher got involved was because of Hubble. Well, kind of like again, it just goes back to having, bad luck and being at the wrong place at the wrong time, which so far seems to be like the running theme of this series. Now you can say that Hubble getting involved with Kleiner is on him, which you can say that. It kind of feel bad for the guy because he was let go from his job, and he's just trying to support his family. And Kleiner knew about his situation too, so he pretty much used that to bring him onto his scam. Molly Bev Gordon was Joe Reacher's girlfriend, who also worked for the Treasury Department. Now Joe's death has already made the story personal, but Molly's death has made it more personal, especially knowing how serious the relationship was between Molly and Joe, and it just sucks that you didn't really get that face-to-face interaction between her and Jack Reacher. Mayor Teal, the corrupt politician who is like the other villain, the other antagonist, along with Spivey, probably got that name wrong, but he was the assistant warden at the prison that Reacher and Hubble were in. And then you got the corrupt cops, Chief Morrison, Sergeant Baker, and you got Kleiner's crazy son who doesn't have a name. He only goes by the Kleiner kid. There are some characters that I kind of feel should have had more of a significant role, but didn't, like Mrs. Kleiner, Kleiner's second wife and stepmother to the Kleiner kid. It was brought up when she was introduced how she looked sickly, but really she was just scared of being around the Kleiners, and the story didn't really go any deeper. The book didn't really go any deeper with that. It just felt like she was there and she just kind of disappeared from the story. There was also Officer Dwight Stevenson, who I thought could have had somewhat of a bigger role because of his family connection with Paul Hubble and his family. But out of all the corrupt cops, he was actually one of the good ones, which I can say that at least. But I guess if I had a negative, which I actually didn't bring this up in my non-spoiler review, that this book, that I feel like there could have been a couple of characters that, at least to me, I feel like should have had a little more attention. Now, when I was talking about the plot of this book, part of the plot was that Reacher was going to Margrave to investigate the death of the mysterious death of Blind Blake, but he got sidetracked with being framed with murder and Joe's investigation. But he does find out what happened to Blind Blake, though. I do like that they didn't forget that part. Blind Blake, he was a real person. He was a real guitar player who passed away on December 1st, 1934. The cause of his death was listed as pulmonary tuberculosis. But his death was fictionalized for the book. In the book, Reacher would sometimes go to a barbershop ran by two guys who don't have names. They go by a young barber and old barber. Reacher asked them about Blind Blake, and the old barber told him that he had a sister who was a singer that knew Blind Blake. And around the end of the book, Reacher meets the old barber's sister, and she tells him what happened. When she and Blind Blake were walking, there was a man and his son walking towards them. The old barber's sister, she moved out the way, but Blake accidentally bumps into the boy. The boy screamed at his dad, telling him to punish Blake, calling him like a bunch of racial slurs, and the father ended up beating him to death. And it turns out that the boy was Mayor Teal. Another thing that I like about this book is that I like how everything was tied together. There will be because there would be times that I would forget about Blind Blake, which is crazy because that's the only reason why Reacher was in Margrave in the first place. And also, like, Joe even mentioned that even mentioned about Blind Blake, being in possibly being in Margrave, and I like how the book brought that back and finally got that part of the story resolved. Like I said in my non-spoiler review, I thought this was a pretty good book. I like the story. I like the narration, the characters, the action. I like the mystery, the suspense. There are some characters like I said before. I felt should have had a little more attention, and there are some slow parts here or there. But overall, I was never really bored. It was like I was thinking the whole time like what now, or where is this story going? It's like you can't wait to see what happens next and how the book would end. Which is why I give The Killing Floor, the first Jack Reacher book, a 5 out of 5. That's my spoiler review of Killing Floor. I hope you enjoy it. Let me know your opinions of the book and your opinions of the Jack Reacher series. Subscribe, like, comment, and I guess that's it. This is Marcus from the Weekly Spot. More content will be coming out soon, but until then, take care, everyone.